Hey guys! Tonight we journey into the thick, humid tangle of the Yucatán jungle where the moon filters through leaves like silvery gauze and the vines seem to shift when you're not looking. This is no tropical vacation. You're here for something much older and definitely much weirder. You've heard whispers of a cenote, an oracle well once believed to be a mouth into the Mayan underworld Xibalba. Its waters, they say, still ripple with answers, and, possibly, with something waiting to be heard. You probably won't survive this, not because anything's going to grab you, but because you're not exactly a trained cave diver with an extensive background in Mesoamerican theology. You're just someone with a flashlight, a questionable map, and some serious curiosity, always a dangerous mix. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing who's up for a bedtime mystery across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge deeper into the jungle boots, squishing against soft, spongy ground. The humidity feels like a blanket, someone soaked in warm tea and draped over your shoulders. The cicadas screech in a kind of chaotic chorus as if warning you off, but you press forward, brushing aside fronds and ducking beneath thick, hanging vines. The air smells like damp moss, crushed herbs, and something a little metallic. According to your crumpled, sun-faded map, the cenote is just ahead, an open sinkhole, sacred to the ancient Maya, where rituals were performed and voices were heard. It's one of the so-called oracle wells, believed to connect the surface world with the shadowy realm of Xibalba, the place of fear. The name alone really sets the tone. Cenotes like this one weren't just swimming holes. They were spiritual crossroads. Mayan priests used them for sacrifices, sometimes of jade, sometimes of blood, and sometimes of people. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You're not here to jump in. You're here to listen, maybe observe, definitely not touch anything. You break through a thicket and stop short. There it is. The jungle falls strangely quiet around the clearing, like the trees themselves are holding their breath. Before you lies the cenote, perfectly circular, maybe 40 feet across, rimmed with gray limestone that crumbles if you step too close. Ferns grow along the edges, their roots dangling down into the darkness like nature's chandelier cords. The water below glimmers faintly, reflecting the moonlight in broken shards. You step closer, gravel shifting beneath your boots. That's when you notice the first real oddity. There's a trail of worn, rounded stones leading from the tree line directly to the cenote's rim. Not a game trail, not random erosion. Deliberate, as if thousands of feet once passed here. Historians still argue whether these pathways were used solely for ceremonial purposes or if pilgrims from surrounding villages would walk them for more personal, quieter reasons. You're leaning toward both. Standing here, it's hard not to feel like you're intruding. You take a breath and crouch at the edge. The drop is steep. The cenote isn't just a pool, it's a portal into the earth, like someone punched a hole in the crust and left it open for whispers. Your flashlight beam struggles to reach the bottom, dancing along the walls of damp stone before being swallowed entirely. It's said the Maya believed these pools were entrances to the 9 levels of the Underworld. Some even placed offerings wrapped in cloth or bark food bone obsidian tools and lowered them into the depths. But here's a lesser-known tidbit. Some villages believed the water itself had memory, that if you whispered a question into it at night and waited long enough in silence, it might echo back an answer in the morning. You clear your throat and sit back on a nearby stone, brushing off a line of tiny ants. This may take a while. A soft rustling in the bushes behind you freezes your spine. You spin around. Nothing, just leaves swaying. You chuckle to yourself. Probably an iguana or a monkey, or one of the invisible psychopumps assigned to guide curious night wanderers like yourself into eternal darkness. Kidding. Mostly. You stretch your legs and glance upward. The moon's higher now, casting longer shadows across the clearing. You're not cold, but there's a chill forming between your shoulder blades. Something primal, ancient, like the feeling you get when someone stares at you from behind a curtain. You grab your satchel and pull out a crumpled notebook. Not for writing, just a security prop. The kind of thing that gives your fingers something to do when you're trying very hard not to think about being swallowed by a sacred pit. You flick through the pages, each one filled with notes on other oracle wells, some half-translated glyphs, some frantic sketches of frogs. Oh, and there's a doodle of a particularly judgmental turkey vulture you met on day 2 of this trip. Behind you, a tiny splash echoes from the cenote. You freeze. It wasn't a drip. It sounded more like something breaking the surface. You slowly turn. The water's still, too still, a perfect black circle. You inch closer, again peering down. There's nothing visible, but you swear there's a faint shimmer just beneath the surface, like a heat mirage, or like something is watching you from beneath glass. You hear the wind rise behind you, and the jungle sings a little louder, not threatening, just alert. You're not alone out here, not exactly. But then again, no one ever is at the edge of the underworld. You stay crouched for a while watching the water. No more ripples, no strange reflections, nothing but the steady pulse of your heartbeat in your ears, and the jungle brushing its leaves together in the breeze, like someone trying to get your attention politely. Eventually, you stand and brush the moss from your pants, realizing you've been holding your breath again. You've got to stop doing that. It's not like the cenote is going to inhale you if you breathe too loudly. Then again, historians still argue whether certain oracle wells were believed to be alive, not metaphorically literally, that the water itself was sentient, capricious, selective. Some priests would sing to it, offer tobacco or honey, even smear their own blood on the rim. It wasn't just about what you asked. It was about how respectfully you asked it. You glance around the clearing, the vines, the smooth path stones, the way the moonlight seems to gather only here. It's all a little too perfectly framed, like the jungle is presenting the cenote to you on a silver platter. You half expect a ghostly butler to appear with a napkin over his arm and say, "Your abyss, sir." You walk the perimeter of the well slowly. The limestone is cool under your fingertips as you trail your hand along it. On the far side, tucked behind a screen of ferns, you find something unexpected: stone steps, old, nearly eroded, but definitely carved. They lead downward along the inner edge of the cenote. Not all the way, but part of the way, enough to make your palms sweat. This wasn't on your map. You descend a few steps carefully, the stone slick with condensation. The air grows colder here, touched by a whisper of underground breath. The sort of breath that smells faintly of minerals roots and something sweet but decaying like overripe fruit left too long in the sun. Halfway down, you stop at a carved alcove in the rock. It's shallow like a shrine, maybe 2 feet deep, just large enough to cradle a figure. There's no statue now, only the faint outline where something once rested, and above it a row of glyphs. Your flashlight catches the edge of the carvings, and you squint. They're weathered, partially flaked off. You trace them gently with a fingertip, not really expecting understanding to drop from the sky, but still hoping for some clue. One glyph repeats 3 times. It looks like a serpent mouth open tail, looped crowned with what might be a feathered headdress. Quetzalcoatl. No, that's more Central Mexican. Here you're in the heart of Maya territory. Kukulkan, maybe. But the more you stare, the more the image seems to move, not literally just in that frustrating way. Your brain tries to fill in gaps. The tail coils a little tighter. The jaw seems wider. You blink and shake your head. Okay, time to step away from the rock. That's when you hear it. A low humming vibration, not quite music, not quite wind. It seems to come from the well, or maybe from beneath it. You freeze on the stairs, one boot on a patch of moss, the other slipping slightly on wet stone. You listen. It stops. Okay, that's fine. That's normal. That happens when you're overtired and dehydrated and maybe didn't eat enough plantain chips today. You climb back up to the rim. Another strange thing. There's no wildlife around this clearing, no birdsong, no frogs, no buzz of mosquitoes. Just silence. You'd expect some bugs at least, maybe a sleepy coyote sniffing around. But no, it's like they know something you don't, which isn't comforting. You sit again, feeling the stone cool your back through your shirt. You sip some lukewarm water from your canteen and look up. The stars are out now, glittering through the holes in the canopy. You think about the Maya astronomers who charted those same stars from pyramids, just like the ruins you passed this morning. They were brilliant mathematicians, by the way, predicted eclipses with astonishing accuracy, tracked Venus obsessively. In fact, some believe that oracle wells like this one were aligned with specific celestial events. There's still debate about whether certain sacrifices or prayers were timed to the planet's morning rise. A chill breeze tickles your collar. You rub your arms, listening again. And then from the opposite side of the well, a whisper. Not words, not wind. Just the unmistakable sensation that someone is whispering about you just out of range. You whip your flashlight across the clearing. Nothing. But the whisper comes again, this time closer. A little behind you, like someone about to tap your shoulder and ask if you have a moment to talk about eternal damnation. You stand quickly, heart hammering, flashlight up, satchel ready to swing like the world's least effective weapon. Still no one. You call out a soft hello, just to be sure. The jungle predictably does not answer. You take a cautious walk back to the shrine alcove. No one there. But you swear the stone feels warmer now, as if something inside it has stirred. That's when you remember the fringe theory, the one you laughed off in a podcast a few weeks ago. A retired archaeologist claimed that certain cenotes weren't just natural formations, They were engineered, carved downward slowly as initiation sites for priests, that some had chambers sealed inside them, stone pockets, echo rooms. He also said that when the humidity was high enough and the moon was nearly full, and if your heart was open, whatever that means, you could sometimes hear the last prayers of the drowned. You're not saying you believe that, but you're not saying you don't either. You return to the rim glance once more into the water and speak aloud. A question, just a soft one. Who was the last to enter willingly? The wind holds its breath. The leaves shift. And for just a moment, the surface of the well shimmers like heat on stone. You blink hard, like that'll somehow reset your vision, like this is just a glitch in your own perception. The shimmer on the water is gone, now replaced by nothing more than the steady black mirror you've come to expect. Still, the silence hangs heavy, like wet linen draped across your shoulders, tugging you gently but insistently toward the edge again. You resist for now. Instead, you scan the surrounding ruins. Just beyond the well's clearing broken walls, peek through the underbrush carved stones jut like forgotten teeth, and a moss-covered archway barely holds itself up under a curtain of flowering vines. You pick your way toward it. There's no real path, just faint indentations where time and feet once wore tracks. The jungle tries to close the gaps with roots and vines, but you can still sense where people once moved, purposefully, reverently. The archway leads into a rectangular courtyard, probably once a ritual platform or ceremonial enclosure. Hard to say exactly, though it's clear this site hasn't been fully documented. You make a mental note, whoever marked this as minor shrine, ruins low priority on your permit, was seriously mistaken. At the center of the courtyard is a curious structure, a narrow rectangular altar of sorts made from obsidian slabs fitted together without mortar. It's been scorched black in places oddly uniform and surrounded by what looks like dozens of shallow stone depressions, like bowls carved directly into the floor. You crouch beside one. At first you think it's just for burning incense or holding ritual offerings, copal maize, maybe cacao. But then you notice the channel carved between each bowl, connecting them all in a looping, deliberate path, like a circuit, like something meant to carry fluid. And not just any fluid. Blood, maybe. You whisper the word like it might offend someone. Something. You recall that the Maya often practiced bloodletting, not just sacrifice. Elite individuals would pierce their tongue's ears, even genitals, to offer their life force. Not out of cruelty, but devotion. A gift returned to the gods, from whom it was borrowed. Historians still argue whether this kind of altar was for human blood or symbolic substitutes. Some say pulque, a fermented drink, was sometimes used in ceremonial channels. Others whisper it was both starting with drink, ending in something more personal. Your finger brushes a groove worn into the obsidian, and you feel that old thrill again, the line between curiosity and caution, thinning like stretched wax. You move to the far end of the altar and find another carved panel, this one set into the floor. It's smaller than a standard stele, but unmistakably intentional. A grid of glyphs dances across its surface, surrounding a raised spiral like a whirlpool or a fingerprint, or both. A fringe theory comes to mind. You remember a dusty little book you skimmed last month, Rites of the Mouthless Path. Supposedly, some Maya priests believed that sound could summon the underworld's gatekeepers. but not just any sound. Chanted tones in low circular chambers, tones that would swirl, rise, and fall, like breath drawn backwards. In those spaces, they said, reality might soften. It's probably nonsense, but as you whisper the first line of a chant, you half remember quietly, unsure, you hear it again, that low hum from the cenote. This time it lasts longer. You rise and turn back toward the well, through the archway, past the vines, over the stone-ribbed path. You're not alone anymore. A woman stands beside the well. You stop cold. She's not glowing or transparent. Nothing theatrical. Just standing. Her back is to you. Long dark hair. A pale tunic cinched with a red sash. Bare feet on cold stone. You call out. She doesn't flinch, doesn't turn. You take a step closer, your boots suddenly deafening on the moss. Another step, you squint. There's no shadow. She has none, and yet she breathes shallow, visible, just enough to stir the mist rising from the well. You hesitate, heart thudding in your ribs like a jaguar pacing its cage. Another step, still no reaction. Finally you speak. Are you okay? Her head tilts, not toward you, just slightly to the left, like she's listening to something inside the well. And then she walks forward, right into it. No splash, no sound, just gone. You run, skid to the edge, shine your light down. Nothing. The water is still, too still. You sit down hard, suddenly aware of the hammering in your chest and the strange chill soaking into your legs. Your fingers tremble against the flashlight. This can't be real, right? You look behind you. No footprints, no sign she was ever here. And then you remember something else. A weird anecdote from an expedition diary dated 1923. A German explorer had visited this same region, claimed to have seen a woman near a well, described the same tunic, the same sash. He followed her, got lost for 3 days. When they found him, he couldn't speak for weeks, just drew spirals in the dirt and whispered the same word over and over, Zuhui. No one ever figured out what it meant. You stand again, brushing off damp leaves, trying to calm your nerves. The well waits, unmoved, patient. A whisper curls through the clearing, almost inaudible. But this time, it's a word. Ask. And now, you're really starting to question your sanity. Still, there's something undeniably real about this place. Something ancient and awake. You walk one slow circle around the rim, as if testing your own gravity. And then you ask again, what is the oracle hiding? This time the answer doesn't come in words. The wind shifts, and far below something moves. You lean slightly over the stone lip of the cenote, careful not to let your boots slide on the moss-slick rim. There's no logical reason for you to be doing this, none whatsoever. And yet, here you are, whispering questions into a deep hole in the ground, like it's a sentient entity, instead of, a naturally formed limestone sinkhole. And still something stirs. The surface of the water below ripples not just with the wind, but with purpose. Concentric circles pulse outward from the center, though nothing has touched it. The light of your headlamp doesn't penetrate far, only a faint greenish haze. But in that haze, you think you see a shadow, swimming, floating, no rising. You scramble back from the edge so fast you nearly trip over a root. Your heart lurches against your ribcage with all the grace of a startled raccoon. But when you stop and look again, nothing. Still water, still silence. You'd laugh if it weren't so bizarre. Instead, you sit on a flat stone, rubbing your temples, and try to center yourself. It's been a long day, or maybe not long enough. The thing is, this cenote, this oracle, well, as the locals once called it, isn't just any old swimming hole. Historically, cenotes were sacred to the Maya, seen as portals to Xibalba, the Underworld, the realm of 9 gods, each more unpleasant than the last. Not so much hell as bureaucracy and dread with a side of bone-chilling dampness. Here's a mainstream historical fact for you. Several major Maya cities, Chichen Itza, Ekbalam, and Koba, all built important temples near cenotes. Archaeologists have pulled out artifacts from these wells that range from gold discs to obsidian blades to, yes, human remains, offerings meant to appease or consult the gods. One fringe theory suggests certain cenotes were used not just for sacrifice, but for prophecy. You blink at the thought. The oracle. Well, if the old stories are true, wasn't a name some travel writer slapped on it. Supposedly, this one spoke. Through dreams, whispers, visions seen in the reflection. It didn't just demand offerings, it gave answers. Historians still argue whether these oracles were the product of mushrooms' divine inspiration or clever priests with good acoustics and a flair for the dramatic. But the idea persists. Ask the well, and the well answers, if it likes you. You rise again, brushing off damp moss and a few clingy ants. Lovely. The jungle around you seems to pause. Birds fall quiet. No howler monkeys. Even the cicadas have zipped it. You mutter, well, here goes nothing. You take out your little field notebook, its edges crinkled a coffee stain across the top corner, and flip to a blank page. You sketch the glyph spiral from the altar floor earlier, and suddenly something clicks in your memory. You saw that shape before, back in the archives of the Regional Museum, buried in an annotated codex copy. The spiral was paired with another glyph one that loosely translated to mouthless teacher, or maybe voice without lungs. It's unclear. The idea, according to the marginalia, was that this figure, this teacher, lived below the surface, not metaphorically, literally, a being that held knowledge so old and so vast it could no longer speak in words, only pulses, impressions. You're not sure if it's terrifying or kind of poetic. The wind picks up again, and the leaves above you rattle like bone dice in a pouch. You shine your light into the well again, trying to make out anything new when something catches your eye. Just at the far edge of the circular rim tucked behind a gnarled root is a narrow stone stairway, almost invisible, covered in centuries of creeping moss. Your pulse quickens. Who puts a staircase into a well? You move toward it, brushing aside the vines. The first step is cracked but solid. So is the next. You aim your light downward. It coils like the spiral on the glyph twisting into darkness. Somehow, you know exactly how many steps there are. 9, of course. In Maya belief, the underworld had 9 levels, each one a trial. You place your foot on the 3rd step. The air cools drastically. Your breath fogs in front of you. You consider stopping, just standing here dramatically for a bit like a horror movie protagonist, but you know how that goes. Might as well lean into it. As you descend, you note the walls are carved, barely visible now under the mold and lichen, but unmistakably ancient. You trace your fingers across one as you pass a serpent swallowing a human figure, or perhaps birthing it. Hard to say. The line work is delicate, obsessive, the kind only someone who truly believed would bother with. By the seventh step, your flashlight begins to flicker. A small part of you wants to throw it across the cavern in protest, but you sigh and give it a solid thwack instead. Old school solutions. It steadies. And then you reach the bottom. You expect to find water, but there isn't any, not here. Just a platform of stone about 10 feet wide, surrounded by jagged rock walls and heavy shadow. In the center, a small basin, and above it, a jaguar mask. It's carved from onyx mounted to the wall, and its eyes glow faintly, not from any visible light, but like something behind them remembers fire. The mask's mouth is open, and inside it, a smaller spiral glyph identical to the one from the altar. You approach slowly, aware of how loud your breathing sounds now. You swear the mask is watching. Not literally moving, but aware. As you lean over the basin, your flashlight catches something at the bottom, fragments of obsidian tiny bones, and something that looks like a painted shell. You hear your voice again, but not your voice. A question forms not aloud, but inside your chest, heavy and ancient. Will you trade certainty for knowing? You blink. You whisper, "What's the difference?" The well does not answer, but the mask exhales just once, and the basin floods with cold, clear water. You see your reflection, and then someone else's. Your hand hovers over the basin, but you don't touch the water. You're not that impulsive. Not yet, anyway. The reflection staring back at you isn't entirely wrong. It's just slightly off. The eyes aren't yours, though they try to mimic your shape. The expression is neutral, but something behind it twitches like it's holding back a grin or a warning. You take a step back, and the reflection lingers a moment longer than it should. Yeah, that's normal. You shake it off and scan the chamber again. The onyx jaguar mask remains still, its carved teeth bared in a frozen snarl. But its presence hums like it's listening, like it expects something. You look down again. The water has cleared. At the bottom of the basin, you now notice small grooves etched into the stone, forming yet another spiral. This one's tighter, denser, almost like a maze. You pull out your notebook, sketching it with a dull pencil, and realize something bizarre. The new spiral is moving. Not physically, but in your mind, like the lines rearrange themselves whenever you blink. You stop trying to trace it. It's like trying to diagram a dream. You mutter, "Well, that's disconcerting." But what isn't at this point? There's a path leading away from the platform, narrow and damp, half swallowed by roots. You follow it without hesitation, which is maybe the strangest part of all this. It feels inevitable, like something's already been decided. As you walk, the air thickens. The humidity presses against your face like warm cloth. You hear water dripping, but you're not sure from where. The tunnel's ceiling is just high enough to avoid ducking, but close enough to force awareness of every inch. And then you hear it. A whisper, soft, too faint to make out. Not language, a cadence, a rhythm. You press your ear to the stone, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel heat. It pulses like a heartbeat. You're reminded of a fringe theory you once read dismissed in most academic circles. but still whispered about in the weirder archaeology forums. The idea that cenotes were not just ritual sites, but sentient ecosystems, living repositories of memory, that the limestone, the water, the trapped gases, even the mineral makeup, all collaborated to record human emotion and thought like a psychic tape recorder. The theory goes that if you enter at the right moment, in the right frame of mind, you might be able to access those memories, like tapping into an emotional fossil. It's complete nonsense, probably, and yet here you are, sweating in a limestone tunnel beneath a jungle, whispering hello to a wall. No one answers, except something does. The tunnel opens into another chamber. This one's lower, colder. Here the walls gleam with condensation, and something glitters faintly beneath it. Mica, maybe, or is that gold? There are carvings everywhere, not just glyphs, but full figures. Rows of people bowing, a priest's arms raised, a monstrous figure with 6 eyes and no mouth rising from a stylized whirlpool. You recognize the whirlpool from earlier. In the center of the chamber, there's a shallow pool rimmed in blackened stone. At first it seems still, but then you realize it's not water. It's ash, fine and gray, like the remnants of 1,000 ritual fires or the dust of old voices. You kneel beside it and notice small depressions around the edge, as if people once knelt here, just as you are now, over and over again. You dip 2 fingers into the ash. It's cool, dry, and as your skin breaks the surface, you hear a voice not in your ears, but behind your eyes. It says, "Not yet." You pull back fast enough to spill a little, and it disperses like breath in winter air. You feel silly again, and yet a mainstream historical fact comes back to you now. The Maya believed cenotes were home to Chak's rain gods who could bring both abundance and destruction. But some lesser-known inscriptions suggest there were other spirits, older unnamed, who lived in the liminal spaces, between water and stone, between breath and silence. These beings didn't grant rain. They granted insight, or madness, often both. Historians still argue whether these spirits were metaphorical representations of environmental forces or something else entirely. The glyphs don't clarify. They only warn. One such warning found at Ekbalam reads simply, "Do not mirror what does not belong to you." A comforting thought considering you just mimicked a ritual posture in a forgotten ash chamber. Well done, explorer. You rise, brushing the dust from your hands, and try to decide whether this is the part where you turn back. Take your mysterious notebook and go home. Get a coffee, maybe several. But the path ahead tilts downward again, and this time the steps are deliberate, carved, almost ceremonial. You follow them, and as you descend, the stone narrows, the walls curve inward, and the shadows deepen until the air feels like thick fabric, like you're crawling through someone else's memory. At the bottom, the chamber widens suddenly, so much so that you pause. There are rows of stone benches, a high ceiling supported by carved pillars, and at the far end an altar flanked by 2 statues, one of a skeletal bird, one of a woman with no face. The altar is lit, not by flame, but by bioluminescent moss, glowing in a faint green circle directly above it, dripping like the world's slowest chandelier. You approach breath slow now, feet silent. On the altar, another basin, this one dry, and beside it, a clay tablet. You pick it up. The surface is etched with yet another spiral, this time encased in a grid. It resembles a calendar or a lock. You trace it with your thumb, and somewhere deep beneath your feet, something clicks. The click is barely audible, more vibration than sound. You freeze mid-step, listening. Nothing follows, no rumble, no sudden gust of air, but something has changed. You feel it in your bones, like a room holding its breath. You lower the tablet slowly, eyes sweeping the chamber again. The statues, the benches, the bioluminescent moss above the altar, all the same, and yet the shadows seem a little deeper now, as if something beyond the glow has shifted closer. You glance down. The basin that was dry before, it's now half full. Not with water, not ash, something thicker, darker, ink maybe, or no, it's too viscous. It ripples in a slow, syrupy way, reflecting nothing swallowing light. You lean closer, narrowing your eyes. That's when you see it. Faint outlines in the basin shapes just beneath the surface. At first, you think it's your own distorted reflection, but the longer you stare, the clearer they become. Hands, dozens of them, pressed against an unseen barrier as if reaching up from another world. Fingers splayed palms wide, not quite desperate, not quite welcoming, just waiting. You step back, not because you're afraid, but because you understand the implication. Someone long ago created this system with intention. You've triggered a sequence, and once it starts, there's no off switch. You mutter, "Great! I've entered the world's most elaborate, haunted Rube Goldberg machine." Only this one might have consequences that go beyond getting a marble to drop into a teacup. You scan the chamber again for clues. Along the far wall, past the benches, is a mural half consumed by mold. You wipe away a portion of the grime with your sleeve, revealing a series of painted vignettes. Here's what you see. A group of figures in ceremonial dress lowering a bound person into a pit. Then a whirlpool rising upward, swallowing the stars. Then a single survivor crawling from the mouth of a jaguar, eyes glowing white. And finally, oddly domestic, a person sitting before a fire, writing in a codex while shadowy hands emerge from behind. You tilt your head, trying to interpret. One fringe theory comes to mind, that some of the Mayan oracles weren't just ceremonial positions, but actual navigators of the underworld. Not metaphorically, literally, like part-time scribes, part-time spirit commuters. Historians still argue whether these depictions were intended to be symbolic rites of passage or vivid records of something more shamanic, more experiential. The truth is buried in a tangle of translation gaps and colonial censorship. You trace one of the painted hands absently, and just then, something moves near your feet. It's faint, a flicker, like light bouncing off a mirror. You look down. The spiral from earlier, the one etched into the altar tablet, is glowing faintly beneath the basin now. Not just drawn, but alive. Thin veins of bioluminescent algae have woven into the stonework, forming a soft pulsing network. It's not just decoration, it's circuitry. Primitive, organic, but functional. That's when you remember a little-known fact. Some pre-Columbian engineers used sap-based resins and crushed beetles to create long-lasting glows for night rituals. The idea that this sea note might have been rigged with natural tech, not far-fetched. In fact, a few rare reports from cave systems in Belize suggest the existence of living maps fungal networks encoded with memory. You whisper, "So this is a GPS for ghosts." You'd laugh, but you're too focused. The path forward is clear now, literally. The spiral glows like a trail of breadcrumbs winding between the benches and into a corridor previously hidden in shadow. You follow it, heart calm but alert, like you've entered a very slow, very old video game level. The corridor narrows quickly. Claustrophobia creeps in like a forgotten draft. Your shoulders brush damp stone. Your breath echoes weirdly delayed, almost off-sync, like the cave is mocking you. Then the floor changes, from cut stone to packed dirt. And up ahead, light. Not green moss glow this time. Firelight. You step through a low arch and find yourself in a chamber filled with small, flickering flames. Dozens of clay lanterns, all unguarded, all burning low. No wax, no visible wick, just flame, hovering in oil. At the center of the room sits an old wooden platform, circular, low to the ground, surrounded by what can only be described as offerings. Dried corn husks, carved obsidian eyes, teeth, human, definitely human, and one dried blue flower, perfectly preserved, its petals curled in a frozen yawn. You recognize the flower, Ixtabai's bloom, an endangered jungle species once associated with Mayan myth, the same flower said to grow only where betrayal bled into the ground. According to lore, it marked the grave of the falsely accused. You kneel near the platform, uncertain whether you're trespassing or participating. Both, probably. And that's when the room sighs. Not literally, but the flames dip just slightly in unison. A gesture or an inhale. You exhale slowly and say out loud, "This time I'm listening." No voice responds, but something brushes your shoulder air, maybe. Maybe not. The truth settles in your mind like humidity this whole descent. It's a dialogue. You're not discovering. You're being shown. And maybe, just maybe, judged. One of the flames flares higher, and beside it, something takes shape. Not solid, not threatening, just a shimmer, a faint outline of a robed figure, head-tilted hands, folded. It stands across the platform, motionless. You don't move. You don't blink. The figure raises a hand and points toward the next corridor. No drama, just direction. You nod and follow. You follow the shimmer's direction in silence, each footstep soft against the earth-packed floor. Behind you, the flames continue their quiet dance, casting elongated shadows that cling to the walls like memories reluctant to let go. The corridor ahead is narrow, a sloping descent, wrapped in a tighter spiral. You duck instinctively, brushing against roots that have pierced the stone like skeletal fingers. The smell shifts less of wet limestone now and more smoky, bitter, slightly metallic, like old incense and iron-rich soil. Your breathing syncs with the rhythm of your steps. It almost feels meditative, except for the persistent feeling that you're being watched, not maliciously, but with intense curiosity, like a librarian staring down a noisy visitor. A soft glow pulses ahead, warmer than the moss lights from earlier. You turn a final bend and step into the strangest room yet. It's a library! A Mayan underworld library, if such a thing could exist yet. Here it is. Not shelves, exactly. More like niches carved into the stone, each containing folded bark codices, bundles of feathers, carved bones, etched with script, and, most intriguingly, small clay masks, each with a single obsidian eye inset at the forehead. They're arranged with the care of archivists, not priests. The walls are painted too, not with scenes of sacrifice or conquest, but charts, star maps, seasonal cycles, eclipse predictions, all swirling around a single motif, repeated over and over again, the cenote. It's not just a well. It's a clock, a calendar, a gateway. Your gaze drifts toward the central pedestal. No skulls this time, no creepy figurines, just an open codex, yellowed and brittle, resting in a shallow bowl of what looks like crushed petals. You can't read the glyphs, but something about the spacing, orderly, balanced, feels mathematical. Historians still argue whether Mayan texts were purely ritualistic or served as records of real journeys, astral projections, trance walks, even shamanic dives into cenotes like this one. Theories range from deeply practical to wildly speculative. But here now you lean toward belief. You reach out fingers brushing the edge of the codex. It trembles faintly, and in your mind, not your ears, you hear a sound. A voice, not quite, more like tone. A tuning fork, humming inside your skull. You recoil slightly. The feeling fades. You turn your attention to the masks. Each one is unique. One shaped like a toad, another like a bat, a third blank except for that single glinting eye. You lift one experimentally. It's surprisingly light, worn smooth on the inside as if passed from face to face across centuries. Some fringe anthropologists have claimed these masks were interfaces, ritual devices meant to enhance sensory crossover during oracle sessions. Basically, wearable spiritual tech. Others dismiss this as New Age nonsense. You decide not to wear the bat-faced one just yet. No need to risk uploading your soul to some forgotten underworld mainframe. Instead, you explore. On the far side of the chamber, something unexpected, a narrow doorway carved into the wall with utter precision. Not a cave crack, not an erosion gap. A true architectural doorway square and perfectly leveled. The kind that suggests intention, geometry, a design. Just above it, etched in clean relief, is a single glyph, a downward-facing eye flanked by two glyphs for blood and sky. You pause. Rough translation, what watches below? Cool. Charming. Totally not concerning at all. You duck through. The temperature drops instantly. Not freezing, just sharp, like a breath held in ice. You wrap your arms around yourself, wishing for one of those ridiculous jungle expedition jackets that cost more than your car. The tunnel here is different, less carved, more grown. Vines drape across the ceiling like chandeliers. Fungus lights your way with faint purple glow. The walls pulse faintly, as if the cenote itself is alive, breathing in slow rhythm. Eventually the path opens again, and there it is, the well. You've reached it, the oracle well. You don't need a sign to know, you feel it. The chamber is cathedral-sized, wider than anything you've passed through so far. The ceiling disappears into darkness, dripping with condensation. At its center, cut deep into the rock, is a perfect circle of water, smooth black, motionless. It doesn't reflect you. It doesn't ripple. It doesn't shine. It just is. You walk to the edge. There are no guardrails, no carved warnings, just worn stone smoothed by countless footsteps. You kneel, peering down. There's no bottom, only depth. And after a moment, something else. Movement. Just a flicker, like something huge shifting far below too deep to identify. Please don't be a crocodile, you murmur. Then something stranger. You see a shape, vague, shimmering. At first you think it's a trick of your flashlight, but it holds. It's a face. Not clear, not human, but watching. Not maliciously, just curiously. You blink and it's gone. You sit back on your heels. The air is heavier here, but not oppressive, just full, like being wrapped in a weighted blanket made of secrets. A soft sound behind you. You turn. One of the masks from earlier is lying on the ground. The blank one, as if placed there. You sigh. Right, of course. You pick it up. You turn the obsidian-eyed mask over in your hands, the inner surface cool and smooth against your skin. It's oddly comforting, like handling a well-worn stone that just happens to stare back at you with a single inky pupil. You hold it up to the torchlight and tilt it slightly. The obsidian catches the glow in a ripple of black-purple hues, like a raven's wing, moving through starlight. Part of you whispers, not to do this. Another part, the sleep-deprived curiosity-possessed part that has clearly seen too many late-night documentaries, whispers louder. You came this far. So naturally, you slip the mask over your face, and the world shifts. Not violently. Nothing cinematic. No flash of light or explosion of memory. Just a quiet detachment. Like your consciousness steps 3 inches to the left of your body and starts watching things from a softer angle. You're still standing at the edge of the Oracle Well, but now the water glows, faint blue-green pulsing with bioluminescent spirals like distant galaxies. Tendrils of soft light curl upward from the depths. They don't illuminate the room, they whisper. Through it, barely clinging to the surfaces they brush. In the mask you hear faint music, not melodies, but tones. Long, low vowels echoing in layers, an underwater chant, played on instruments that no longer exist. It's like a lullaby from a language no one's spoken in 1,000 years. And then you see them, figures, standing just beyond the well's rim, motionless. Not threatening, just present. Tall, draped in long cloth that flickers like candle flame, their faces obscured by glyph-painted veils. Each holds something small and strange, a gourd, a folded codex, a lizard skull, a simple torch that doesn't burn. They don't move. They don't breathe. You blink and they're gone. You slide the mask upward just slightly, and the room reverts to normal. The glow is gone. The figures too. Only the silence remains, and the water still utterly still. Historians still argue whether cenotes were viewed strictly as sacred offering sites, or whether they also functioned as literal entryways into Xibalba, the 9-layered underworld of Maya cosmology. In some interpretations, cenotes were seen not just as thresholds, but as mirrors, reflections of celestial bodies inverted into earth, with priests acting as translators between sky and stone. You pocket the mask, just in case. You rise and take a step backward, careful not to slip. The ledge here is slick, and not all parts of the chamber are structurally sound. A chunk of stone nearby has collapsed inward, revealing another tunnel at an odd downward angle. It's not part of the original design, you can tell, by the rawness of it. Cracked, irregular, framed in jagged roots and broken mosaic. Naturally, you go in. It slopes deeper than you expect, and for a brief moment, you consider turning back. Then a faint, rhythmic sound draws you forward, the wet, echoing drip, drip, drip of water on hollow stone. You emerge into a circular room. This one is clearly ceremonial. The walls are lined with carved panels, each depicting a version of the same story, told from different angles, a figure descending through the layers of the world, accompanied by serpents, jaguars, and what appears to be a flock of skeletal birds. Each carving ends the same way, with the figure reaching a pool of water and becoming a reflection, not falling, becoming. There are stairs here, leading directly down into a shallow channel, where water flows slowly, glowing faintly with what might be algae or memory. The stones under your feet are warm, unnervingly so. You're reminded of hot springs or nerve endings. In the center of the room is a stone circle, an altar maybe with 4 indentations shaped like hands. Not symmetrical, not human-sized, just hand-like. You resist the temptation to test your own. You've read this story before, and it doesn't end with someone getting a cool bracelet and walking out richer. Instead, you look up. The ceiling of the chamber is dome-shaped, painted with stars. Except they move, just a little, like reflections in a pool disturbed by a breeze. It's possible, no probable, that your sense of time is starting to dissolve. Or maybe the mask's effect hasn't fully worn off. Some fringe theorists claim certain underground rituals in ancient Mesoamerica involved sensory deprivation paired with psychotropic plant smoke, in this case, crushed morning glory seeds, or the resin of copal burned until the air was too thick to breathe normally. The resulting trance state was believed to open a kind of eye of time where past, present, and myth blurred. You breathe in deeply. No incense here now, only the faint mineral tang of the cave. Still the sensation lingers. You walk to the edge of the pool, and something glides across it, not in the water, on it, a shadow. Wide, graceful, the shape of a manta ray, woven from smoke. You freeze. It vanishes as soon as it appeared. You glance back at the altar. The room feels like it's listening. You whisper, "What do you want me to see?" Silence. And then from the pool, a bubble. It rises slowly, impossibly slowly, and then bursts with a soft sigh. Where it was now floats an object, a single perfectly dry feather. Black, glossy, too big to be from any normal bird. You reach out, and it rises a few inches into the air, just out of reach. Naturally, you smile and shake your head. Figures? The feather just hovers there, mocking you with its slow, bobbing indifference. You stretch a little farther, keeping your balance on the slick lip of the stone basin. It flutters playfully, you'd swear, then drifts slowly to the side. You follow. The glowing water gives off a steady warmth now, like a hidden hearth beneath the surface. It makes your skin prickle not from fear, but anticipation. You trail the feather as it circles lazily over the shallow pool, drifting past a submerged carving, another serpent, of course, mouth open wide, as if exhaling the liquid itself. You crouch breath, held and swipe. Your fingers pass right through. No splash, no ripple, just emptiness. You try again, still nothing. This feather clearly is not from the world of gravity and physics and overly confident travel influencers. It's something else, something ceremonial, symbolic even, like it only exists if you stop trying to grab it. So you do. You sit back on your heels, watch it drift. And, sure enough, it begins to descend, slowly, gently, like a dream curling into sleep. It floats downward, twirls once, then disappears beneath the surface. A beat passes. Then behind you, a click. Stone on stone. You turn sharply, heart-thudding once, then twice in your ears. A section of the chamber wall has shifted inward. Not dramatically, just enough to reveal another doorway. One that had previously been part of the mural. You walk over, raise your torch, and examine the space. The passage is narrow, curved, and on both walls the same recurring symbol appears again and again, an eye within a spiral, carved deep, as if etched by something with claws instead of tools. Historians still argue about the use of iconography in late post-classic Maya religious sites. Some claim the spirals represent wind or movement, while others say they denote passage between spiritual realms. Still others believe they're stylized centipedes, sacred guides in the darkness crawling between the worlds. You step inside. It smells different here. Older, earthier, like a room that hasn't been disturbed in centuries. There's no draft, no sound of dripping water, just the crunch of tiny bones beneath your boots. You don't look down. The passage curves left, then right, then descends. The walls begin to press closer, the ceiling lowering just enough to require a slight hunch. Roots dangle like the fingers of someone reluctant to let go. Your torch sputters, once the flame dancing nervously, and then steadies. Eventually the space opens up into another chamber, this one small and utterly silent. At its center, a single slab of limestone worn smooth from what must be centuries of use. On it rests a bowl carved from jade, filled with a dark, viscous liquid that doesn't reflect the torchlight. You hesitate, because obviously you're not touching that. Instead, you examine the walls. They're etched with overlapping glyphs, too layered to parse at a glance. You trace one slowly with your finger, a stylized fish, or maybe a comet arcing downward. There's something about this room that hums. Not audibly, but somewhere in your chest a vibration builds. A low thrumming pressure, like you're standing too close to a great engine idling behind a paper-thin wall. You glance at the bowl again, still motionless, still lightless. Except, no, wait, is that your reflection? You step closer, peer in. It's not your face. It's a version of your face. Older, eyes deeper set, a pattern of dark paint streaked across your forehead. Around your neck, something jagged and feathered, a ceremonial collar. And on your wrists, woven cords frayed and red. The you in the bowl blinks, tilts their head, and smiles. You stumble back, nearly knocking over your torch. When you look again, the bowl is empty. Gone, dry. You swear quietly, just a whisper, and place the torch into a bracket on the wall, letting your hands rest on your knees. You need a moment. The Maya weren't just master architects and astronomers. They were storytellers, not merely to entertain, but to instruct, to prepare the soul. In their worldview, time wasn't linear but cyclical. Every story returned. Every life echoed another. So the vision in the bowl, maybe not a hallucination, maybe not even the future, just another loop in the spiral, another version of you that already walked this path. You rise again, steadier now. At the chamber's far end you spot another narrow stairway. This one descends steeply, too steeply to be practical. It looks more like a chute than a passage. At the base, the darkness is absolute. Naturally, you proceed. The torch struggles as you move downward, the air growing thick and damp, clinging to your skin like wet cloth. Your foot slips once, but you catch yourself muttering thanks to whatever unseen hand kept you upright. Eventually, the steps end. You step into a room so vast your torch barely scratches its edges. The sound here is wrong, like the walls are too far apart for the echo to behave normally. A second after your boot hits the floor, the sound returns, delayed and distorted. You walk forward. Something crackles underfoot. You lower the torch. Bones, hundreds of them, small, not human. Rodents, reptiles, maybe birds, all arranged in swirling patterns that radiate outward from a central circle of smooth black stone. You step over them carefully. At the center of the swirl is something unexpected, a wooden bench. Just a simple carved bench, worn by time, but intact. You sit, and the ground beneath you shifts. Not physically, just perceptually. Like sitting down, changed the rules of the space. Suddenly you feel watched, not by something hostile, but curious, something ancient, and somehow patient. You sit very still on the wooden bench as if any movement might dissolve the spell, holding this space together. That's the only word for it, spell. The moment feels suspended, thick and slow like warm honey. The walls breathe around you, not in sound or motion, but in pressure. You feel it in your ears, your ribs. The room inhales, and so do you. You lean forward slightly, your hands resting on your knees, and let your eyes drift over the swirling patterns of tiny bones again. Spirals within spirals. They form constellations on the stone floor like a forgotten zodiac. The faintest of breezes brushes your cheek. Impossible, given there's no visible opening. But there it is. A hush of breath scented faintly with something dry and sweet. Maybe copal resin, maybe just dust, pretending to be memory. Historians still argue whether these lower chambers were used for funerary rites or initiations. The glyphs are vague. Some seem to suggest birth, others speak of descent, and some simply repeat the word Xibalba, the underworld, over and over like a mantra or a warning. You rise from the bench slowly, carefully. The spiral of bones parts around your feet with an almost respectful silence, and you walk toward the far side of the chamber where a low doorway squats like a waiting mouth. You have to crouch to enter your shoulders, brushing damp stone. The moment you're through the space, opens again, but only just. This chamber is smaller, but somehow more oppressive. The ceiling is lower, the walls curved inward, and there, at the center, is a well. Not just a depression in the stone, this is a crafted thing, circular and lined with a mosaic of jade shards and obsidian flakes. The materials shimmer faintly in your torchlight, giving the illusion of movement just beneath the surface. And the water inside is black. Not dark. Black. Matte, lightless like staring into an eclipse. You step closer. The lip of the well is about waist height, just low enough to lean over and peer in. You hesitate, then do. Your reflection doesn't appear. Instead, you see stairs, faintly, as if through smoke or distance, descending in impossible spirals into the depths. And then, just as you're about to lean farther, something moves. A shadow, a flicker, a shape that doesn't belong. It vanishes the moment you blink. You reel back, heart racing, in a slow, tired way. It's not fear exactly. It's something gentler, heavier, like grief for something not yet lost. The well is quiet again. You take a breath and circle it once, looking for inscriptions. There on the far side, a single glyph carved into the stone. A hand reaching upward from waves. Not waving, reaching. The Maya believed cenotes' natural sinkholes were portals to the underworld. Offerings were thrown in jade gold, even human sacrifices, depending on the occasion. But this isn't a cenote. This is something else. Artificial. Intentional. And more disturbing than that, it's dry. You drop a pebble in, expecting the faint plink of contact with water. Nothing. You listen. Still nothing. And then, plunk! But it comes a second too late, as if the well had to think about it first. You back away. It's then you notice something new, a shape tucked into the far corner, low to the ground, half buried in dust and webbing. A skeleton, human by the look of it, draped in ceremonial garb, what's left of it, beads, faded cloth, and an elaborate headdress now slouched sideways, tangled in its own decay. One hand clutches a bundle, a scroll perhaps, though the parchment has all but disintegrated. The other hand, skeletal fingers wrapped tight, is gripping something shiny. You approach slowly, crouching beside the remains. The shiny object is a mirror, a small circular obsidian mirror, perfectly intact. You stare into it. Your reflection is there, but behind you, a flicker. You spin around. Nothing? You look again. Still nothing. Just your tired face and a 1,000-year-old fashion statement you didn't ask for. Quirky tidbit. Some obsidian mirrors were used not for vanity, but for divination portals between this world and others. Aztec priests believed they could see the gods through them, or at least their moods. The Maya likely had similar uses, especially in sacred spaces like this. So, of course, you pocket the mirror, because that always ends well. You stand brushing stone dust from your knees and turn back to the well. Still silent, still impossibly deep. You hear something, then a soft splash. But you didn't move. You raise the torch. A ripple is spreading across the surface. From the center, it widens, then slows, then fades. Another splash, then another, and another, like rain, but from within. You step back instinctively, your spine pressing against the cool stone wall. You can't see the source. The surface remains dark, smooth, and unreadable. You glance at the bones in the previous room. Maybe this was where it ended for them. Maybe this well wasn't for drinking or scrying or sacrifice. Maybe it received things. And maybe something has started to send them back. The thought stays with you as the ripples finally vanish. You wait and wait, but nothing more comes. The silence returns. Carefully, you place the mirror down, not on the floor, but on the edge of the well. A peace offering, perhaps, or a trade. The air stirs slightly. Then in the wall beside you, another doorway shifts open. No noise, just motion. You hesitate for longer than usual, but then you walk through, because of course you do. The passage beyond is narrower still, barely shoulder width, its walls warm with the breath of the earth. You press forward one hand, grazing the rough stone, the other keeping your torch aloft as shadows press in on either side like an audience holding its breath. There's a scent here, moss, and something faintly metallic, like rust or old blood, but muted, softened by centuries. The kind of smell that comes from forgotten rituals and extinguished fires. As you shuffle forward, your steps echo faintly, except it doesn't sound like one set of footsteps. There's a trailing rhythm behind you, just off your own pace, a delay, like your shadow is walking a few beats behind. You stop. So does it. You turn quickly, but the passage behind is empty. Only the torchlight jittering against ancient stone. You mutter something like, "Cool, totally normal," under your breath, because sarcasm is a survival tactic at this point. The corridor opens at last into a circular vault, low and domed. The ceiling is covered in faded paint star maps, or perhaps underworld cosmology. You tilt your head and try to parse the arrangement. Some constellations resemble what we know today. A scorpion here, a jaguar there. But others are more abstract twin skulls, joined by a serpent or a tree growing upside down into a mouth. Historians still argue whether this style of ceiling art was intended as an astronomical chart or a spiritual roadmap. It might be both. The Maya often layered meaning like stonework, one idea nested inside another, like riddles etched in limestone. You walk the edge of the chamber, noting the indentations in the floor groove's shallow bowls. Burn marks. This was a place of performance, not a party kind of performance, more like ritual reenactments, sacrificial dramas perhaps, the sort where no one wants to be cast as the volunteer. A few broken masks lie discarded near the far wall. One resembles a bat, another a crocodile. The largest depicts a skeletal figure with obsidian eyes and jagged shell teeth. You pick it up. It's surprisingly light. It was meant to be worn. Quirky detail. Some Mayan priests are thought to have worn elaborate masks not only during ceremonies, but in daily life, part of embodying their chosen deity's attributes. Imagine commuting to your job as the embodiment of death every morning. Rough gig. You set the mask down, gently resisting the childish urge to try it on. You've seen enough movies for one lifetime, thanks. In the center of the room, there's a pedestal. Unlike everything else here, it's pristine, smooth. A square block of jade about waist high with a concave top shaped like a shallow basin. It's filled with ash, pale and soft like crushed bone or burnt offerings. You sift it gently with 2 fingers. Underneath, something clicks. Not loudly, just a soft mechanical nudge. And then behind the pedestal, a slab of wall grinds open, revealing a narrow stairway, spiraling downward. Of course it does. You pause for a moment, then say aloud, because going up and out would be too easy. Your voice bounces back with an echo, except it says only easy, easy. Cool, definitely comforting. You begin your descent. The stairs are tight, curling like a serpent's spine, and the air becomes cooler as you go. Not cold exactly, but damp. Your fingers trail the wall for balance, and you notice it's smoother here, worn from countless hands. You're not the first to come this way. Halfway down, you notice niches cut into the walls at intervals, small alcoves holding tiny carved figures, deities, animals, half-human things. Some are eroded beyond recognition. Others stare back with perfectly preserved eyes of shell and jade. The craftsmanship is exquisite, unsettling in its detail. You could swear one of them is smiling, like freshly. One figure larger than the rest draws your attention. It's a woman, or perhaps a goddess. Her eyes are downcast, her hands cupped as if holding water, and her headdress is a cascade of snakes. A carved plaque beneath her reads something you can't fully interpret, but two glyphs stand out: prophecy and sacrifice. A chill dances along your neck. You keep moving. You reach the bottom at last. The stairs open into a chamber unlike any you've seen yet. This one is carved entirely from obsidian. Walls, floor, ceiling, all polished to a lightless gleam. Your torchlight seems swallowed, unable to bounce, and your reflection twists and warps on every surface like a dream trying to remember its own face. The sound of your breathing is loud here. The room has a strange acoustics. Nothing echoes. Even your footsteps feel absorbed. In the center of the room there's a stone chair. Not a throne. It's too low, too simple. More like a seat for someone awaiting judgment, or giving it. Behind it, a wide, flat wall curves upward like a black mirror. The torchlight dances across its surface in fluid arcs, but nothing is reflected. Not even you. This, you realize, is the true oracle. The well above was a gate, but this is where the messages came from, or still come. You sit in the chair because, yes, that's what we're doing now, and immediately the temperature drops a few degrees. Your skin prickles. The obsidian wall before you pulses once with a strange inner shimmer. Not light, not exactly. More like movement beneath the surface, like a thought trying to break through. Then the whispering starts. Soft, low, layered. You can't tell what's being said. Not yet. It's not your language, but something older, more guttural, as if the earth itself has words it never finished learning to pronounce. Your vision narrows slightly. You focus on the wall. Something is forming there. A shape. A face. You can't be sure. It's not stable. It blurs and shifts. One moment it's a skull, the next a jaguar, then a woman's mouth speaking backwards. The whispering intensifies. You grip the arms of the chair, not in fear, more like anchoring yourself. You get the distinct feeling that you could fall into this wall if you allowed your concentration to drift. The mirror speaks, not in words but in feeling, and what it gives you is not comfort. It's warning, and it's far too late to turn around. You remain frozen in the obsidian chair for what feels like hours, though of course it could be minutes. Time has a way of getting confused around ancient magic and pitch-black underworld mirrors. The air around you pulses gently, like the breath of something that doesn't need lungs. Then, all at once, the whispering stops. The wall's shimmer fades. The mirror becomes still and blank again, like the eye of a statue suddenly closing. You take that as your cue to stand up, though your knees creak like you've just done squats in full armor. There's a strange heaviness clinging to your body now, like you've been underwater. Thoughts feel slower, your limbs slightly delayed, as if your body is buffering reality on a weak Wi-Fi signal. Your torchlight catches something near the corner of the chamber, a passage almost hidden in the wall's obsidian swirl, narrow and slanted like it wasn't meant to be seen unless you'd been invited. Great, you're on the guest list now. You take a moment, just one deep anchoring breath, and then step through. The corridor beyond is carved in rougher stone, still ancient but less ceremonial, more utilitarian. A maintenance tunnel for a sacred space, or maybe an escape route for when prophecies got a little too real. Either way, it slopes upward, which is refreshing. Finally, some metaphorical progress. As you walk, the air warms again and your ears pop faintly. You're moving toward the surface, though how close is hard to say. The walls here are undecorated, just smooth stone streaked with mineral lines. Occasionally, you see handprints, faint red ochre stains that were slapped there hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago. Some are human, some distinctly not. A mainstream historical fact floats gently into your mind. Like a sleepy trivia bubble, the Maya believed caves and caverns to be sacred entrances to the Xibalba, the Underworld, a place not of fiery torment, but of trials and illusions. It was a realm of shadows and tests, governed by death gods with delightfully charming names like One Death and Seven Death. Truly a vacation hotspot. You chuckle softly to yourself, more from nerves than humor. Because while you know this is all archaeological, your lizard brain insists that something invisible is walking 2 steps behind you. You reach a chamber, a sort of vestibule, not large, but intricately carved. The ceiling is shaped like a coiled snake, the body looping and spiraling inward to a central boss that resembles a fang. You crane your neck to follow the pattern. In the center of the room, set into the floor, is a circular disc of stone, just slightly raised. You recognize the glyphs now: sacrifice, journey, reflection, blood, future. All the greatest hits. And in the center of the disc, a bowl. It's obsidian again, but this time filled with water. Clear, still, perfectly round. The edges of the bowl are feathered with ash and dried petals, marigold, and something else, something white and unfamiliar. You crouch beside it. Quirky fringe fact time: some modern shamans in Guatemala and Chiapas still use water mirrors like this for divination, staring into stillness until visions arrive. It's called scrying. And while it sounds spooky, the actual practice is mostly people sitting in silence until they hallucinate something mildly helpful. You peer into the bowl. The water reflects your face, or something very close to it. Because now your eyes are different, slightly wider, irises darker, and the face is smiling. You are not smiling. You blink, so does it. You stand up quickly, stumbling a little. The bowl remains still. Whatever happened, it didn't follow you out of the reflection. At least, not visibly. Historians still argue whether these vision bowls were purely symbolic or actual tools of communication with the gods, or something worse. There's always a something worse, isn't there? You keep moving. The corridor ahead begins to slope more sharply now, veering up in long switchbacks. Here and there you pass through collapsed sections rubble that forces you to squeeze through sideways like toothpaste in a tube. Your arms ache. Your legs feel like overcooked noodles. But something keeps pulling you forward. Not literally, just the kind of knowing you feel in your spine. Eventually you reach a small landing with a shaft of daylight actual daylight piercing through a jagged opening in the rock above. It lights up the space like a spotlight from heaven, revealing a pile of offerings beneath it. Burnt incense, sticks, clay figurines, old cloth, and bones. Lots of bones, some small, some human, most long since bleached by sun and time. You tip your head back and look up through the crack. It's not far, 20 feet maybe, jagged but climbable. You start to ascend, fingers gripping rough stone feet, scrambling for purchase. Halfway up your boot slips, and you curse under your breath, but in a whisper, just in case the cave gods are still listening. At last you haul yourself through the opening and out into the jungle air. It's warm, bright, blinding even. The sudden change makes your head spin. You lie there for a moment, breathing hard, cheek pressed against the dirt, grateful for the sun, the sky, and the lack of whispering stone mirrors. You sit up slowly. You're on a raised outcrop surrounded by thick jungle. Birds call in the distance. Somewhere, a howler monkey shouts like an old man who just found out his favorite chair was moved. You're back in the land of the living, but something is off. The trees are familiar, yet wrong. The sun feels too still. And on your wrist, just faintly, there's a new mark, a small glyph. It wasn't there before. You rub at it, but it doesn't smear. Just sits there, gently tingling. You don't know what it means. Not yet. But you have a feeling you've been marked, chosen, or warned, because the oracle doesn't speak just to hear itself. It remembers. You sit with your back against a sun-warmed stone, watching the trees sway gently in the jungle's sigh. It should feel peaceful, shouldn't it, after everything you've just endured? But the mark on your wrist hums like a tuning fork buried beneath your skin, and the silence carries just enough tension to make you wonder whether the forest is holding its breath or listening. You rise, brushing red dust from your legs, and turn to look back at the fissure you crawled through. From this angle, it's invisible, just another rockfall tucked into the tangled green. The kind of thing you'd pass a dozen times without noticing. That's probably the point. Some doors don't want to be found unless they want you to enter. And now you're not entirely sure the door has closed behind you. You start to walk. The jungle here is dense but navigable. An old trail, perhaps. Not a road exactly, but a narrow path where the undergrowth is less hostile, like someone or something has passed this way before. The foliage shifts to reveal stone fragments beneath moss-collapsed columns, shattered serpents' faces, half erased by centuries of wind and root. A mainstream historical tidbit surfaces as you walk. Many Mayan temples and ceremonial sites were deliberately abandoned, their sacred spaces sealed and hidden beneath foliage long before the Spanish arrived. It wasn't always conquest or destruction that ended these places. Sometimes it was choice. A quiet retreat from powers that had become too large, too strange. You spot a broken stele rising crookedly from the earth. Its surface is etched with faint spiraling glyphs. You trace them lightly with your fingertips, each groove like a whisper in stone. Some of the symbols you recognize. Others, you swear you saw them flicker inside the mirror chamber. That's fine. It's totally normal to share an alphabet with underworld reflections. Happens all the time. The path bends sharply and the trees thin. Before you lies another structure, smaller than the ceremonial platform near the cenote, but intact. A low stone house with a single doorway, framed by jaguar heads, their mouths wide enough to swallow your shoulders. You hesitate, then step through. Inside, it's dark, but not pitch black. The roof is partially collapsed, allowing thin streams of light to stripe the room like sleepy sunbeams through broken blinds. Dust hangs in the air motes, drifting like lazy fireflies. At the center of the chamber is a circle of carved stones, an altar of sorts. Around it are bundles of leaves, twisted cords, and bowls of dried pigment. You kneel and examine one of the bowls. Black ash. Another holds crushed shell. Another, a glittering red dust cinnabar. A toxic mineral often used in ceremonial paints. The Maya knew the danger, but painted with it anyway. Beauty and risk, hand in hand. Your eyes drift to the walls. Paintings, faint but vivid enough to stir your chest. They tell a story. Not linear, not clean, but familiar now. A figure descending into a well of stars. A mirror catching fire. A traveler marked by the gods. You step closer. One panel shows the traveler standing before a group of masked figures, each one wearing a different animal skull, their hands outstretched not to welcome, but to weigh, to judge. Fringe tidbit. Some Maya priests believed the underworld contained more than just 9 levels. There were trials beyond the 9th reserved for those who had meddled with prophecy, those who had spoken to oracles without offering the proper tributes. You look down at your empty hands. No cocoa beans, no feathers, definitely no human hearts. You may have undertipped the spirit world. You walk out of the house slowly, the mark on your wrist, itching now, hot and silent. Above, the sun slides behind a cloud, and the temperature drops just enough to raise goosebumps. The forest beyond is darker, and ahead something waits. A tall stone arch rises from the jungle, its surface swallowed in vines. Beneath it, steps, narrow, descending again. Not as deep, not as grand, but familiar in their downward promise. Of course, you should have guessed. The oracle well wasn't a single place. It was a path, a process, a ritual. And you're not done. You descend the steps which spiral tightly. Unlike before, no torch accompanies you, only thin strands of light that drip through gaps in the stone, illuminating your way with just enough glow to show what you should avoid stepping on spiders the size of saucers. Sleep tight. The tunnel ends at a wide underground chamber. No mirror here, no altar, just an empty room with walls covered in handprints. Hundreds of them. They layer and overlap, red, black, faded white. Some are small, child-sized, others enormous, stretched unnaturally long. The effect is suffocating, like being applauded by ghosts mid-performance. Bravo, you made it this far. You edge around the walls, careful not to touch them. In the far corner of the chamber, a figure waits. You freeze, for real this time. It's not human, but it's not entirely not. The figure is wrapped in cloth, dozens of layers, each one darker than the last, as if stitched from the shadows themselves. No face shows, just a mask carved from jade, shaped like an owl's face. Wide circular eyes, a small hooked beak. The owl is a messenger of the underworld in Maya belief, a silent flyer, a watcher of secrets. The figure lifts one hand palm forward and then points to your wrist. The glyph glows faintly. Then it nods once, solemn, final, and vanishes, like it was never there. You stand in silence. Historians still argue whether these owl-masked beings were myths, metaphors, or misunderstood priests performing esoteric rites in hidden sanctuaries. But something deep in your bones says this wasn't a priest. This wasn't metaphor. This was a checkpoint, a sign that you'd passed the first trial. But what comes next? That's unclear. One thing's for sure, though. You won't sleep the same way again. You remain still for a long moment, the silence of the owl-masked figure settling into your chest like fine ash. The cavern no longer feels oppressive, just echoey, hollow, but not vacant, as though the space itself has memory, and now you're part of it. You retrace your steps, slowly resisting the urge to glance over your shoulder. Of course you do. You glance anyway. No owl, just handprints and hush. Once back at the stone archway, the jungle feels different. The light has shifted, softer, diffused, as if the trees too have watched something vanish and don't quite know how to move on. You push forward. The ground rises slightly beneath your feet, no longer damp but dry-crusted with curling leaves and soft moss. You recognize this terrain, higher ground, less prone to flooding, a good place for building, which makes sense because now you're starting to see walls again. Low, crumbling walls peeking through the ferns like the ruins are shy. Then a courtyard opens before you. You pause. This is no accident. A circle of structures, most collapsed, ring a clearing overgrown with ferns. In the center, a raised stone platform, just wide enough for someone to kneel on. The breeze hushes. Your skin prickles. You step into the clearing, and suddenly a scent catches you, faint floral cloying. Not unpleasant, but familiar. Fringe fact, the Maya often used copal incense in rituals, a tree resin burned during offerings to attract the attention of gods and spirits. And here now, though, you can't see any fire. You swear you smell its sharp sweetness drifting through the trees. The platform is covered in carved symbols. Unlike the others you've seen, these feel rushed, jagged, less ornamental, more desperate, like someone scrawled warnings in a language only the wind can read. You crouch and touch the edge. Your vision stutters. And just like that, you're not quite in the jungle anymore. You're not quite anywhere. The courtyard is gone. In its place, a dark field stretching endlessly in all directions, dotted with torches that flicker without smoke. Shadows move between them, but they don't approach. They wait, watching. You're kneeling on a mirror again, but this time the reflection beneath you isn't yours. It's the owl-faced figure. It stares up, unblinking. And behind it, 100 more masks. Jaguar, serpent, bat, deer, all carved from jade and obsidian and bone, each staring from a body wrapped in night-black cloth. You realize with some unease that every creature you've seen in the murals now has a form, a watcher. They've gathered, not to hurt you, but to listen. You speak. You're not entirely sure what words leave your mouth, if they're words at all. They feel like breath and rhythm, like something the jungle already knows. You don't speak it so much as release it, like a held breath finally exhaled. And when you finish, the watchers bow, not deeply, but in recognition. And then they vanish, just gone, like they were never really here, only a test pattern on a screen that disappears once you've seen it clearly. You blink, and the jungle returns. You're still kneeling on the platform, alone. The copal scent fades. The silence deepens, not empty, but full of the kind of quiet that comes after music. You stand. You feel something shift inside you. Not dramatic, just less afraid, a little more tuned in. Mainstream fact time, the Maya believed the cenotes and sacred wells of their land were portals to Xibalba, the underworld, a layered realm of trials, illusions, and truths that didn't always play nice with logic. But not everyone who entered was doomed. Some returned wiser, marked. You glance at your wrist. The glyph there has faded, but it hasn't vanished, just dulled. A gentle bruise, or maybe a souvenir. And now comes the question no explorer, dreamer, or sleep-deprived oracle wannabe wants to ask, how do you get back? You're not entirely sure, but your feet carry you forward anyway. Past the courtyard, through a corridor of stones, toward the fading light that slips like melted gold between the trees. At last you find yourself standing at the edge of a wide clearing, a place where birdsong hums low, and the vines hang like the world's sleepiest curtains. Across from you, a crumbling stairway you recognize. Your entry point, the beginning. It looks smaller now, less imposing. You step forward and pause, because beneath your foot something crunches. You look down, a broken shard of obsidian, perfectly smooth, perfectly reflective, and in it, not your reflection, but the owl mask again. Only this time the eyes close, as if satisfied. Historians still argue whether the Mayas' beliefs about portals and prophecy were purely symbolic or rooted in some deeper cosmology modern science can't quite explain. That debate, honestly, is way above your spiritual pay grade. All you know is you saw things, felt things, you were watched, judged, and somehow accepted. You pick up the shard, tuck it into your pack, and climb the steps. The sky above is bruised with late twilight. Cool air brushes your face, and somewhere in the trees an owl calls, once then falls silent. The path home waits. The first few steps into the outer jungle feel lighter. The vines seem to part for you, the ground more certain beneath your feet. Maybe it's the afterglow of having your soul poked by ancient mask spirits. Or maybe it's just the relief of having cell signal again, kidding. Probably. Either way, the tension in your shoulders has eased, and your heartbeat doesn't sound like a tribal drum anymore. You don't rush. You let your pace soften. There's something reverent about walking away from a place like this, like leaving a cathedral at dusk or stepping out of a theater just as the credits roll, still haunted by the story. You don't want to turn your back too quickly. It might feel like disrespect, or hubris, or just plain bad manners. So you glance back one last time, and there it is, the mouth of the cave where the oracle well still waits, hidden and patient. The trees drape it like a veil. No glow now, just shadows and moss, and the faintest scent of incense curling in the distance. You swear you hear water trickling, or maybe whispering. Either way, you nod. You keep moving. A modern anthropologist once suggested that cenotes were never just wells. To the Maya, they were layered thresholds, geological, spiritual, emotional. A drink offered to the gods, a mirror into yourself, and sometimes a question that echoed back an answer in silence. And this well, this one had something extra. You make it back to the overgrown trail that led you in. The trees look the same, but they don't feel the same. The color of the leaves seems warmer, the breeze cooler, like everything's had time to stretch after holding its breath for centuries. Somewhere in the canopy above, a bird trills 3 notes and goes quiet. The jungle is full of codes, like that sounds that tell stories if you've got the ears to listen. And maybe now, after everything you do, you trudge onward. Remember that half-collapsed shrine you passed on the way in. It's still there, leaning like an old man, its carved eyes a little less blank now. You stop. You press a palm gently to the stone. It's warm. Whether from the sun or something deeper, you're not sure. The rest of the hike is quiet. The occasional insect, a rustle in the underbrush, and your own breath. You hum a little, not to ward anything off, just to keep the rhythm of your steps from feeling too final. You pass the spot where you slipped earlier. This time, you don't trip. You just step neatly over it. Growth, progress, or maybe dumb luck. Soon, the shadows begin to thin. The jungle opens wider. The sky reappears in full. You've emerged. Civilization doesn't greet you with fanfare. Just the low chirp of distant frogs and the sight of a dusty trailhead where a weathered sign still half promises no trespassing. Too late for that. Still you touch the sign gently as you pass it. Another thank you, another goodbye. Funny thing you think how places can feel alive long after you've left them. You still feel the mask on your face, still taste the metallic air of that underground chamber, still hear the ripple of water like a whispered dare. You don't speak a word on the walk back to your shelter. And when you finally get there, when the stars have started to prickle through the sky like sleepy eyes, you sit down on the floor and take out that obsidian shard from your pack. You hold it flat on your palm. You look into it. And for the briefest moment, you don't see yourself. You see the well again, still, watching, waiting, quieter now, satisfied. It doesn't feel scary anymore, just honest. You wrap the shard in a scrap of cloth and tuck it into the bottom of your bag. You'll take it home, not for proof, but as a reminder that there are places in this world, ancient, quiet, beautiful places, where logic takes a nap and myth stretches its legs, where time folds like damp linen and the air tastes like stories. You survived it. Barely. Congrats. You're officially a bit more haunted than you were yesterday. Now rest. Now dream. Now the wind down begins. Oi, your legs grow heavy. The heat of the jungle is behind you, now replaced by a steady, gentle coolness, like a curtain being drawn across a long, strange day. Let your breath slow. The sound of the forest fades into a lullaby, soft wings brushing through the canopy, the distant sigh of a sleeping well, a single drop of water landing again and again in sacred dark. Your heartbeat no longer races, it drifts. You imagine the owl mask just watching, not judging, not warning, just waiting. In that mask's silence is permission to sleep, to forget, to remember, if only in dreams. The moon above is gentle, now brushed with cloud. The stars blink lazily in their endless cradle. Everything feels padded, wrapped in a hush that holds you safe. You're warm. You're home. You're not alone, but you are untouched, untroubled. Let that final breath stretch longer than the last. And longer still. You've traveled far enough for one night. Time to rest, traveler of shadows. Time to sleep.